So my story, I grew up in a Christian household. My grandfather's actually a Southern Baptist preacher. I was baptized when I was 12 and definitely didn't fully understand the trials and the ramifications that came along with actually professing to be a Christian. For the next 2 years, through the rest of middle school, I really kind of grew, bloomed, was involved with a lot of mission work in the city, things like that. But then, of course, as teenage girls go, a boy stepped into the picture, kind of turned my world a little upside down, not in a good way. It was just not a good relationship. It was abusive on many emotional levels, really screwed me up in a lot of ways, distracted me from school. I was failing 2 classes, which was not appropriate in my household, and I actually ended up very soon after ending the relationship trying to kill myself twice. Pills were my drug of choice. The first time I woke up and I decided if you don't succeed once, try again. Took a whole bottle of painkillers, woke up the next morning and had a little discussion with God and decided that apparently He wasn't quite ready for me to leave yet. I think it's weird when people say that they surrender themselves to Christ. It's kind of a strange thing because I had already been baptized at that point. I understood what it meant to be a Christian, and it wasn't that I just wasn't following Christ or I didn't understand the sacrifices that needed to be made. It was just when I was saved, my roots weren't quite built strong enough for that first storm that came at me. I really started delving stronger into scripture at that point, started getting back into those mission organizations and everything, but different ones this time because I had moved down here to Mississippi. I was in Cincinnati at that point in time. Worked a lot with Operation Christmas Child. Had some issues with the hypocrisy of the church. Really had to struggle to be okay with that. To understand that even though, yes, we're Christians, we're all human and we all fail. I met a very good mentor my senior year who was actually killed my junior year in college last year. She was murdered in her house. But through all this, I've kind of grown a lot. With each trial that comes, you gain something. It sounds really strange, but every time that something happens in your life, every time there's a storm or a trial, something that's brought at you, just like Job, Satan's idea is to kind of get you to turn away. He wants you to crawl back into yourself, when really the whole point of the trial or tribulation is that you're going to reach out to God. Because everyone always says, God will never give you anything more than you can handle. But He will. The truth is, God will never give you more than anything you can't handle without Him. I mean, with Him, sorry. Anything you can't handle with Him. And as I've grown in my faith and as I've developed stronger relationships, especially with other Christians, that's really been something I've had to hold firm to. When I was 18, I was diagnosed with stage 2 degenerative disc disorder, which is the equivalent of something you would most likely find in a 70 or 80-year-old. Very painful, causes a lot of issues, also happens to keep me from being able to have children, which I know a lot of girls at my age don't get that, and I didn't used to, but unfortunately I've had to understand what that means and what that holds. But as I've gone through everything and every story in my life, my sister calls it the most cliche verse ever. It's still my favorite. It's Ecclesiastes 3:1. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. And if I didn't keep that in mind with every step, every movement when I kind of just want to cry from the amount of pain in my back, I don't know what I would do. Because the thing about all of our stories is that they're not just a story for us to tell. They're growth. They're lessons for others to learn from. And they make up who we are.